Hollywood is being rebuilt by artists not afraid to disrupt the status quo. Telling fresh stories and bringing to life characters who until now have been confined to the margins. This is Emerging Hollywood. Today we're meeting up with Alan Yang, the Emmy Award-winning co-creator and director of Master of None and Forever. Alan creates shows starring three-dimensional characters from diverse backgrounds who reflect the new state of entertainment. Alan Yang, what's happening, my brother?
What's up, man?
You good?
I'm great.
I feel like I met you before with Aziz.
You know what happened with Aziz a long time ago? We met over at the Greenwich Hotel. This was 5 years ago, maybe? It was a while ago.
Clearly you didn't find me interesting enough to put me on Master of None.
You know, there's still time. We might do another season.
True. Now, you picked this bar because you filmed here for a scene of Master of None, right?
Yeah, it was a while ago. I thought it brought back some good memories. It was a scene late in season 2. It was a scene with Aziz and Eric Wareheim. And as you can see here, the ceilings are really low, and Eric is 6'7", so he had to fold himself in two to sit where you are right now.
That was tight. What was it about comedy that drew you towards it? Like, was it a defense mechanism growing up? Like, what was it?
Yeah, you would think so, but not so much, man. I felt like I got pretty lucky. Growing up, I was one of the only Asian kids in my school, but I managed to get by, and I wasn't really getting picked on. So it was more like a way for me to bond with my friends, and we would just make jokes all the time. We'd watch all these comedy shows, and it was just part of who I was.
So they always thought you was funny?
I always thought I was kind of funny, and I never thought this was a job. Like where I grew up, no one went into this business. Like, my parents are immigrants. My dad's a doctor, my mom's a high school teacher, and this was not an option.
Are they proud of you, or were they disappointed when you decided?
Yeah, they're pretty proud now.
Okay.
But at the time, it was, I had to explain to them. I was a biology
major at Harvard, right?
I was a biology major in college, and so that seems like you have a very bright future, and then you graduate and you tell your mom and dad you want to go write jokes or write scripts in Hollywood and be broke.
Well, how the hell did you end up in Hollywood? How does a biology major from Harvard end up in Hollywood to begin with?
Yeah, man. So when I got to school, I felt a little bit out of place. A couple things saved me. I started playing in a punk rock band, and I started writing for this comedy magazine called The Lampoon. Getting on the staff of that magazine, you're thrown into this fire, and there's all these people there, and they're funnier than you. And the only thing I can liken it to is the first day in a writer's room. So when you move out to LA, you get into a writer's room, there's 20 people looking at you, some of them who may have run your favorite shows. I remember working with Mike Scully on Parks and Recreation, who ran The Simpsons when I was a kid. Wow. So it's like he's sitting next to you. He's pitching jokes.
A lot of pressure?
Are your jokes gonna beat his jokes? Yeah. So what that magazine helps you do is become a little bit more comfortable, because in the beginning you should maybe not speak up as much. You should learn how to be a little funnier before you say stuff, and then you start learning, you get better, you get better, you get better, you get funnier. You get funnier by hanging out with funny people.
Yeah.
And so when I graduated, it sort of gave me a little bit of confidence I needed to move out to LA and just give it a shot,
Who was the first character that you saw on TV or in film that you saw yourself in?
Oh, man. Probably Jerry Seinfeld. It's like, because I was obsessed with comedy. I was 12 or 13 or whatever. But, I bought Jerry Seinfeld's book. Larry David, the same thing, where it's like, these guys just have an interesting view on the world. Yeah. And, I think the expected answer is like, oh, I saw like an Asian character, but look, there's a lot more to us than what we look like, It's like, what's your point of view? What shapes your sense of humor? And so that was really early on in the show. And I think later when we did Master of None, a lot of people were comparing it to other shows or these auteur shows or films. But what people don't talk about is like, we watched a lot of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And that's like, some of the show was funny because we were inspired by those guys. We love Larry, we love, Seinfeld, all those guys. And that's kind of a secret thing that in the show, like, people don't really talk about as much.
You wrote for South Park too, right?
I did, yeah, that was crazy.
And Carson Daly's late night show.
That was my first job when I was 21, 22 here, yeah.
In Parks and Rec?
Yeah.
So how diverse were the writing rooms then?
It's a good question. So I will say for Parks and Rec, I think Mike Schur, who is the boss over there, did a great job. He always wanted to be 50% women because the show had a female lead, Amy Poehler. And, we were just starting back then, and I feel like South Park was a writing staff of like 2 or 3 people. So it was like, I don't know how much diversity there was. I was the diversity probably that year. But, I think that was like the pre that age. It was like we weren't even thinking about it. And that's a real deficiency. I think there's still writers' rooms out there that are super homogenous, super homogenized, and it's just kind of a secret, It's like there's still rooms out there. So what you're missing out on is these other perspectives. Not that this happens that often, but let's say an issue about an Asian character or something like that comes up, and you're the only Asian person in the room, everyone just looks at you like, all right, speak for all Asian people, right? Is that okay?
Yeah.
It's tough because you don't speak for everybody, and you're just going to do the best you can. But yeah, that's unavoidable in some ways. But we should do the best we can to avoid it.
I'm sure it's hard enough, right, to get things done as an Asian American writer, right? But you connect with another minority, you and Aziz, and y'all try to get a whole show sold. Did you ever have any reservations about that?
I just was like, man, this guy is so talented. He has such a strong point of view. He works harder than anyone I know. I have a strong work ethic. I go crazy. And like on that show, I was like, oh, this guy and me, like we really connected, and we were friends. We didn't think twice. He came into my office and was like, let's do a show together. We're just talking about it as Parks was winding down. And we're like, we want it to be in New York, and we want to do 10 episodes a year, not like 30 episodes or something. So
when you and Aziz were creating the show, what did you want to say about the lives of the characters?
Well, we just want to be authentic to our experience, We didn't go in with a message like, this is what we want to say about Indian people, Asian people. It's more like, what are we going through? When we sit down at dinner, what are we talking about? And then you go from there. And I feel like when stuff has that kernel of emotional truth, it starts to resonate with people.
What do you do when you put together a writer's room and you have diversity there, but the diverse people aren't really that good? What do you do?
That's a sticky situation, right? Well, you got to hire the best people, man. You got to hire the best people. And that's a tough thing. And ideally, you find people who are totally different from you and are better than you. That's the goal, right?
Yeah. How'd you connect with Jay-Z to direct the Moonlight video?
I got a call from my agent, and they're like, are you in LA right now? I'm like, yeah, I'm getting on a flight in 4 hours or something. They're like, would you want to meet with Jay-Z in the next 2 hours? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So he had this video going. He ended up being his manager at that meeting, and then I met him later. But they're like, let's play you the song. I was like, okay. And just like me listening to this song Moonlight over the phone for 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. And then she's like, all right, what do you got? I was like, can I get 24 hours? Yeah. Can I get some time? She's like, okay, 24 hours. And so I had two ideas, and the crazier one was the one we ended up going with, which is
taking this very white show, Friends.
Let's do a shot-for-shot remake of an entire episode of Friends and just have an all-black cast. And then he was kind of like, hey, tell me about Friends. Like, I don't know that much about Friends. I'm like, believe me, it's a show that white people love. Like, it was the show. And to me, it was representative of the monoculture of the 90s and the way that you couldn't escape that. And there's pros and cons, but one of the cons was there's no one who looks like us on that show for 11 seasons or whatever. It was so crazy. And so it was funny. I actually did a roundtable for the Hollywood Reporter, I think, and another person at the roundtable was Marta Kaufman, who created Friends. And I had this secret that I was about to shoot this video in 2 days, and I didn't tell her, obviously. But
are there any comparisons to be made between the experiences of black artists and Asian artists in Hollywood?
Yeah. I think it's a marginalization thing too, and often in opposite ways in terms of the genders. Asian men have generally been emasculated, right, demasculinized, and historically, black men have often been over-sexualized. Ooh. The reverse. So it's been the reverse. And similarly, Asian women have been over-sexualized, and black women have been desexualized. And they were literally taken out of movies. There's a movie called Romeo Must Die with Jet Li and Aaliyah, and they had a scene where they kiss, and they cut it out of the movie. And it's just that is part of the sort of systematic demasculinization, if that's a word, I don't know if it is, but demasculinization of the Asian American male. Culture affects how we behave. Absolutely. Because the people who are least responded to on dating apps are Asian men and black women.
Well, that leaves more sisters for the Asian men if they're really paying attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Asian experience. Has whitewashing finally stopped when it comes to Asian characters?
I would never say it's stopped. Every time you think it's stopped, they do it again. So, it's really the most disappointing when there are characters that are based on Asian characters, and they still don't give it to an Asian actor, because if you're not going to give us that, we're not getting the normal shit either. So when are we going to start, So it is frustrating, but that's why it's really important that there are Asian people behind the scenes, behind the camera, writing, show running, directing, and also Asian people who are executives, who are greenlighting these movies.
Does Hollywood care when y'all complain? Do they hear y'all?
That's a good question, man. We had a scene in Master Known about that season 1, and it was kind of like about how Asian and Indian people don't really have a voice, and that's changing over time. I mean, we're gaining a little bit of ground, we're gaining a little bit of steam, but look, we're behind. We're just starting. We're just babies. We're infants right now. So, we don't expect the same representation yet, but we're getting there and we're building on it,
Have you ever had a white person complain about you writing for them?
Hasn't come up yet. I guess they're very tolerant. No, not really. Not really. Kenya Barris, who created Blackish, said something interesting to me once. He said, we don't get the reverse criticism very often because you learned their culture. Like, I feel like I know a lot about white culture. I saw a lot of white culture.
Absolutely.
So I don't think a lot of white people saw a lot of Asian American culture necessarily, unless they were specifically exposed to it for some reason.
Yeah, because as minorities, we're forced to know about them, but they're not necessarily
You
forced
gotta
to know about
about
us.
it.
For survival almost a lot of times.
Man.
Yeah. But it's a money thing too, right? Like these Hollywood types are like, look, it's just not a lot of Asians here. I would rather cater to this other demo because there's just more of them, right? You don't think so?
Yeah, there's not a lot of guys who look like The Rock. Like, how many Samoans are in America? He's making money. He's making money. It's a special person. That's what it is. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to watch The Rock whether or not I look like him.
So what do you do? Like get an Asian guy and put him in the gym, put him on some steroids?
Yeah, man, make a star. Make a star. Yeah, right? Like, give me one. That's what, you know what I mean? It's like, by the way, you're not doing anyone any favors if you put someone in the movie and they're not ready. Aziz and I talked about before, you can't just give people shows because if it's bad, it doesn't do us any favors. It's got to be great. Our goal really was like, let's make this show the best show that it can be and one of the better shows out there because that's when it starts to really move the needle.
Yeah, don't give me diversity for the sake of diversity. Give me diversity because it's good. Because the truth of the matter is when it's really good, you forget what you're even watching, or who you're watching it about.
You know, you watch Mad Men, it's like, it's really good. So we got to make a show that's really good. That's really good. You got to live up to that? That's really high standard, you know? So you got to work as hard as you can. You got to be ready, and you got to really, really kill yourself to make it up to the standard.
Let's talk about what's next for you. You got a show coming on Apple called Little America.
Yeah.
What inspired that?
Well, basically it came about because Lee Eisenberg, who is one of the creators of the show, called me a couple years ago, and he said, I had this idea. It's an anthology series, and every episode is a different immigrant story. And they'll be funny, they'll be heartwarming, they'll be sad, there'll be all these different tones. And I said, it's crazy that you're pitching me that idea because we just did an episode on season 2 of Master of None, which had not yet come out, called New York, I Love You, which was essentially 3 stories intertwined throughout New York. And it was essentially a pilot for this show that I didn't even know existed, right? So I was like, he's like, well, I can't wait to see it. So I sent it to him. He's like, this is perfect tonally. This is exactly what the show should feel like. And so with that kind of as a calling card, we kind of proceeded and he got Kumail Nanjiani and Emily Gordon on board. So they all helped write the pilot. Again, this is a kind of an underdog show. This show's not going to be started. Kumail's not even in the show. It's a show about real people. All the episodes are researched by Epic Magazine. They're all based on real people, real stories, and it's not going to be stars. Like, it's not going to be massive, massive stars. And to get to be on the same stage with Spielberg and Oprah and J.J. Abrams is really crazy. Is really like, that they believe in us and they're going to give a platform for this really, really special show.
Dope. You did an interview with THR a few years ago, and you said you wrote a pilot about you and your dad.
Yeah.
But you made the characters white. Now you're directing your first movie called Tiger Tales, and it follows a family from 1950s Taiwan to modern-day New York. Why did you feel comfortable telling your family story now?
Number one, I'm just more equipped to tell it.
Okay.
Like, I just feel like I have the tools. This was the time. I'm in such a different place than where I was in my 20s, and in terms of writing, in terms of directing, in terms of my personal life. We shot half the movie in Taiwan, and it's on 16 millimeter. It takes place in the 70s. It's gorgeous, and it's just so much broader and larger a story than it would have been in my 20s when I changed it to white character. I mean, it's a totally different story in the first place. A lot of the movies in Mandarin and Taiwanese, a lot of the movies in the 70s in Taiwan and the Bronx, and it's just totally different from anything I've ever worked on. And I'm so excited for people to see it because it's just so different.
That's interesting what you said, because I'm sitting there trying to figure out what was the turning point in your career where you felt like you could write the stories and characters you wanted to tell, regardless of opportunity.
Yeah, it's part of it is confidence, as I said. It's really like becoming comfortable with your craft and the tools that you have, right? Because, coming out of school, like some people mature faster than others. For me, I was like, okay, I'm ready to write jokes. Let's do it. And I didn't know anything about story. I didn't know anything about character. I didn't know anything about writing a script. You know what? I was like, I wrote for a magazine, I wrote jokes. And then as you get older, your references change, your inspirations change, and what your goals are change. And so this is a reflection of where I am right now and the stuff I'm interested in, the stuff that inspires me, and that's different from who I was 10 years ago.
You're doing all of these different things, but we cannot forget about what got you here, Master of None. Is there going to be a season 3?
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. Yeah. Z is a good friend of mine, and we talk all the time. So, we really the bar for us is there something we're so excited about, a story we're so excited about telling, that we just have to do it. We don't want to make a season just for the sake of making a season or just to make money or anything like that. It's like, to us, season 2 felt like a leap beyond season 1. We want to do something that's totally different if we're ever going to do another season. So we'll see. It's such a fun experience, and it's a bunch of my friends working on it and working with us to make that show. So I'll never rule it out.
Alan,
Cool.
good building with you, man. Appreciate you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, man. Thanks for talking to me.
And continued success.